turns red.
All right, we're live.
All right.
All right, welcome back. Conversations with Casey, and I'm here with April Blair. So, April, I'm just curious because I know we were talking earlier about backgrounds, and most of my background, at least, is sports athletics. Have you ever played a sport or a background, anything athletics or extracurricular activities? Like, what was your background like growing up?
I never played any sports. And when I was in middle school, I got this idea in my head for a very brief moment that I was going to maybe join the track team because I was like, I want to be one of those people who do sport-like things. And then I told my mother about it and I filled out the form and I never turned it in because God, what was I thinking? I could never be one of the people who did those things. But I was so very extraordinarily introverted that the idea of joining any kind of team sport was way uncomfortable for me, that was before we had a word for that, really, we didn't say things like that, you're introverted. But now looking back, I know that I was uncomfortable and I probably would have had fun and I probably could have been good at something, but I didn't know where to begin to get over that discomfort.
Yeah, 100%. I was the kid growing up. I was kind of like into a little bit of everything. Just read books because, it was the scholastic days of you have to read one book a week or whatever it was. And,
that was fun.
Yeah. So I was exposed to a lot of that. What was your childhood like growing up? Were you outside? I was a playing outside type kid. So from sun up to sundown, other than, a little bit of time playing video games.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, outside, riding my bike, rollerblades, or just sitting out there, with my sister or a friend, doing nothing but just sitting out there, walking around. There was a church down the street that happened to have a playground, going over there and just climbing on that and just the things that you did, to entertain yourselves back then.
Yep. And did you grow up in Florida?
Yes. Yep. West Palm Beach.
Okay, cool.
Still here.
Yeah. And so, you think Florida's changed? I mean, obviously a lot's changed, maybe since we were younger, but as you think Florida's changed in terms of do you see kids, playing outside now, or is it seem like a shift in terms of what things used to look like for us?
Yeah, it's definitely different, I don't think it's that different, but with the increase in technology, of course, and there's just social norms have changed a lot about what you do with your kids, I feel like. So that's kind of changed what it looks like outside. But other than that, besides things getting busier and more building up, different areas and more people moving here and stuff like that, it's not that different, I don't think.
The one thing I think a lot about too is community, right? And so community is always the backbone or the fabric of everything. And I feel and this is just my opinion, I feel the sense of community has changed a lot, right?
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah.
That's built into the social aspect, right? We talk about social norms.
Yeah, it's so different. And, just people, I think, now that we can do so much from inside our homes, there's people aren't connecting outside of their homes in the way they used to. Yeah. And if they're doing it in a space where they have to spend money or drink alcohol or, do these other things that would likely impair human connection.
Yeah. So the other thing I think about too, like outside of the social connections and community, is communications change a lot, right? And so like the way that we connect with people, where it used to be like knock, 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 is such and such home, or pick up the phone. And now I don't know about you, but I don't get that many phone calls anymore, like even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, and it's crazy because like I'm definitely one of those people that I'm like, please don't call me. If you do, like, I will never talk to you again.
Mhm.
Um, but and please don't show up at my house. If you knock on the door, even sitting here in my living room with the windows open, I will not be answering it. Like I'm definitely one of those people. But yeah, we definitely don't do those things like we used to, and being able to text, being able to communicate, like you said, in an entirely different way. I think we're both communicating more and yet less. It's
Mhm.
like two things are happening because we have
Mhm.
access to more frequent communication. It makes you
Mhm.
bolder in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
um, but it changes the dynamic in an unhealthy way because
Mhm.
we're not really having, I don't know, what I'm not sure what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. It's like two things could be true at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So, um, I mean, it makes sense to me at least. Yeah, and I think about too, like the social aspect is interesting because it's like, what does it mean to be social, right? Like, and you do social work, so that's another like, it's interesting that term social is like used so much, it almost loses. I feel like it when words are used a lot, like they kind of lose their impact or their quality of what they actually mean. So
Yeah.
like I think of social media, that's the most obvious, right? So like social media, everyone's social, but like are they really social, right?
Right.
Or like what does it mean to be social?
Yeah. It's an interesting question, and I think like going down and like to the what it means to really connect with another person. Like you can be social in a very um, in a shallow level where you don't really
Mhm.
get to know each other, or you only get to know each other on like basics,
Mhm.
and you're not really having you know a deeper conversation or like an emotionally connective
Mhm.
conversation.
Mhm.
So they're two entirely different things.
Do you think do you think the social element is tied to the emotional element, or there's some sort of overlap between those two areas?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like I think and I'm a therapist, so like obviously, like I think that in some way, shape, or form, in our drive for um, socializing for others, for spending time
Mhm.
with others, for talking to other people, like our drive to do that is in the core of it is us trying to communicate on an emotional level, to be able to have some kind of emotional connection. It's just that we don't always know how to do that, and we don't have the right like role models for it, or nobody teaches
Right,
us. We
right.
just end up like socializing in a way that's like not really productive in an emotional way.
Yeah. I I think about like those two areas too because it's like nobody really teaches you that directly. Like they'll teach you that indirectly, whether it's your parents, like your coaches, and then maybe later in life you hear about this term like EIQ, emotional intelligence, right? And you're like, what's that?
Yeah.
And and then you're and then the social side obviously is like it's a big theme now, but we talk about even like social wellness. Like what does that mean for people? So
Yeah.
um
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think like going back to like what I said about being an introvert, like I think one of the hallmarks of that, was for me was um people say this is something that I grew to understand, is like, I didn't want to be in a social situation because I didn't want to have small talk. You know,
Mhm.
so many people, we say we can't stand small talk. Well, the
Mhm.
reason why we can't stand it is because we're not saying anything.
Mm.
We're not having
Interesting.
an emotional, connective conversation. We're just
Mhm.
pretending, and,
Mm.
you know, people who, like me, like I'm an introvert, like I don't want to be alone. Like I want to be social. I want to connect with other people, but I don't want to talk about nothing. Like I want to really connect,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's not always something that we can do. You can't just do that all the time with everybody.
Yeah. It's what's the term that's used a lot now is like people have a social battery. You know, there's a battery now, right? I like that analogy because it's like a visual. You could see a battery and you could see it being drained, right? And so it's like I think people think about that, and I don't know. I don't believe everyone is either so far introvert or extrovert. I think some people are on. It's more of a scale, but I
Yeah.
guess when you slide more towards the introvert side of things,
Mhm.
your social battery means everything, right? Because then it's like, okay, like that could drain like 100 to single digits like real quick, as opposed to someone who like not regenerates, but they get more energy from being around people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I thought it was, when you mentioned about like the um, emotional like IQ thing, like
Hmm.
I remember when talk of that came out, many years ago, and it was like this big deal, and just it really goes to show, how long this journey has been from like, you know, avoiding emotions and never talking about them or role modeling
Hmm.
them to like trying to find a language for it.
Yeah, and I think now, like going back to the sports side of things or athletic side, now you see more athletes that are more vocal about it, right? They want more of those social connections. They want coaches who care, and I always say like sports a model to society. So now you're seeing a lot more of that also in society. Like
Mm.
not that they happen like independently, but I think they're almost like mirrors of each other a lot of times where what happens in the sport world can be a reflection of society or vice versa.
Yeah. I love the word microcosm,
Mm.
that like,
Mhm.
and then we say the same thing, like, I work in like an inpatient treatment facility, and we say the same thing. Like, what happens within these walls is a small picture of what is happening out there in the world, or what real life for each of these individuals is like.
Mm. Interesting. So I think about, I always like this analogy of like tools in your toolbox, right? Like everyone has like different tools or different skills to use. And I feel like if I knew more about emotional intelligence and even social wellness years ago, it's like, okay, I would have been not further off, but I would have had a better understanding of things earlier in life, right? As opposed to sometimes you feel like you're playing catch up when you learn things later. Um, if you had to give people like tools to put in their toolbox on like either of those two areas, do you have any good, um, whether it's like it doesn't have to be like a framework, but something that's like helpful, or I would say something that's practical, right? That people could use every day.
I don't know. One of the coping skills that like I teach the most like is container skills, or I guess containment skills is the proper title for it. Um, but telling people, because one of the things that I'm talking about dealing with emotions is like, do I have to deal with them all the time? Like, do I have to like constantly face my emotions every single
Mhm.
minute of every day? Well, no. You actually have to use skills to manage them and to regulate them and face them and deal with them in the right time and when it makes sense. And
Mm.
but yeah, so containment skills are when you imagine that you have like a box, some type of container, maybe it's like Tupperware,
Mhm.
something that closes. Maybe it's a box, maybe it's a trunk with a
Yep.
key, you know.
Mhm.
Picture that, and when when you have a lot of emotions, or maybe it's trauma, bad memories, grief, and you're not in the right frame of mind or space to deal with it, put all that in the box, lock it up,
Mm.
and then later, when you have time, when you're in a safe place, maybe it's with a therapist, maybe it's
Mhm.
with a friend, maybe it's alone in your room and you're journaling or something like that, you
Mhm.
can open up the box and look
Mm.
at what's in there. So containment skills.
Interesting. I like that. I like anything that has like a visual component to it, right? Like I was always a visual learner when I was younger. So if like I could see it, it's like it's super helpful for me. So it's
Yeah.
probably useful for someone else. Um,
Right.
me. So you mentioned journaling, and I know journaling's become such a I don't say like a buzzword, but it's like I feel like everybody's like, oh, it's just journal, just journal. If you had to give something else like other than journal, like what would be something maybe like parallel to journaling that would be just as useful or practical?
Hmm.
Because I'm thinking about the container box, right? I'm thinking about okay, like journaling would be an easy way. Okay, you journal it, you close the journal, and
I
you can come
see.
back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it depends on the person, like it
Mm.
maybe, you can utilize voice notes or videos on your phone, or,
Mhm.
I think it, or, for people who don't like to write stuff down or do anything that feels like homeworky,
Yep.
like then I think it might just be making sure you're seeing a therapist, or
Mm.
going to a
Yeah.
support group, I think like not everybody you don't have to journal, to work on yourself or to address like, some emotions and things like that. Like you don't have to journal. Um, but if you're still seeing a therapist every week, then that's where you can carry those items in the box and take them out.
Mm. Yeah. No, it's good because I could just hear some people in the back of my head like, oh, that's work. I don't feel like writing. I don't even like writing. It's like that. I mean, I love writing, so like that works for me, but I know what works for me doesn't work for everyone, right? So I always think about
Yeah,
different mediums of everyone learns different or everyone has their different like methods of what they can use, right?
absolutely. Yeah. And then like some people need more structure than just like free writing,
Mhm. Mhm.
So like some people write a gratitude list every day, you know.
Mhm.
Maybe it's get up every day and write a goal of what you're trying to accomplish. Some sometimes it's at the end of the day writing down like one thing that went well, one thing
Mm.
that um, you did well, and stuff like that. Having a little bit of structure to what you're journaling or writing down can be helpful for a lot of people. Just depends on like what works for you, what's your medium, you know like I
Yeah.
know like talking about like the imagery and the visual stuff, like that was never
Mhm.
my thing. Like I was always somebody who wrote stuff, like sitting back and trying to picture something, like a therapist saying just visualize you're at the beach or whatever. I'm like, get real, dude. Like my life sucks, like I'm not at the beach. you know like that was something I always struggled with. Um,
Yeah.
but realistic, like tangible, was more of my thing. Like I'll journal, I'll write things down,
Mhm.
I'll make lists.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think about too, yeah, everyone's just like so different in how they like express themselves, right? Like shout out to my guy Bruce Lee. He always says like, express yourself freely. And I feel like everyone has a different outlet or, how they want to convey their whether it's feelings or emotion or just how they feel that day or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm a list person. I love lists. And I don't know if it's like genetic or just how I was raised or organization, but then I know some people are like, nope, chaos is good with me. I'll just day by day, right?
Oh, yeah. Everybody's different. I've had somebody like write songs or like listen to songs, and like that was the way they felt their emotions and
Mm,
expressed them, like through their art.
yeah, yeah. Music, art therapy and music therapy have been like two big, I don't want to call them emerging areas because I obviously they've been around for a while, but I feel like as far as more mainstream, like as a way of like allowing people to, if you like art, do art. If you like music, do music. And it's like a good outlet for people.
Yeah, and of course, like, something like physical,
Hmm.
doing some kind of physical or even labor, to get out some emotions, to cope with things, depending
Hmm.
on what you need. Like for a lot of people, that's an effective method.
Yeah, 100%. Um, so I think about the other thing too is like the era we live in is so it's not so different, right? Every generation is so different, but because we were talking earlier about I use the analogy of the Knicks fan who was in Manhattan and she was recording off the analog VHS camcorder, right? And
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh yeah, you definitely use some platform or some digital filter, converter, whatever." And then they showed her, and she was using the actual VHS camcorder from back in the day. And I thought,
Wow.
um, yeah, we've come so far. So it's like it almost seems like everything now is like shifted towards digital, but then there's this like small group of people. I don't say it's everyone, but or maybe a large group of people that are like they're craving not just analog, but like more simplistic, like a more simple life. And maybe that's like more Western society than anything.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
what do you think? Do you think like it's more cyclical and we're kind of going back to that, or do you just think it's
Hmm.
where we're at?
I don't know. I mean, I will say like that definitely describes like where I'm at, like
Mhm.
I'm tired of looking at screens. I'm no longer interested in technology. Like, it's boring, and it's tiring. Like my brain is tired. It needs rest. I'm
Mhm.
overstimulated on a consistent basis, and so I subscribed to a print magazine as my Christmas gift to the New York.
Nice, nice,
And I've also been reading the National Geographic. My mom
nice.
still gets them, and I was like, "Oh, can I read this?" It's like I am so sick of reading stuff on the computer or on my phone, like to sit and be able to
Mhm.
like read like a magazine with pictures and words. I'm like, yes, like it feels good.
It does.
So yeah,
And
I think like I think it probably depends on like it could be a generational thing, like
mhm.
um, because like I know for me, like and maybe you too, like I'm a
Mhm.
millennial, like I've been immersed in this for so long. Like everything's just been compounding and compounding. And I don't know. It's a lot, you
It
know?
is. Well, I think about too, like I used to read, shout out to Slam magazine, right? I used to read this magazine called Slam. It was a basketball magazine. And every month I would just look forward to it. And it wasn't like it had different sections in it, right? And so there was like a section kind of like Sports Illustrated where it would show like up and coming um players, right? Like out of high school, something like this. And so I could only imagine like what somebody would feel like if they opened up a magazine and they saw themselves in a magazine, right? In their picture, and then there's an article written about them. And so I think that's something that doesn't change. So if somebody ever, whether it's a book, a magazine, whatever, or even a newspaper, if people still read those, like if you saw that, like I think there's that like I gotta save this, I gotta frame this, I got like it's that visual cue. Like this is really neat.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like it changes the experience. It feels more meaningful.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're getting close to time, so I'm gonna give you a round of applause.
Yes.
And I will put up your contact info if anyone has any questions, because you
Mhm.
are social worker by trade. And so I'll leave
Yes.
you with the last final thoughts. If you want to share anything, if people remember nothing else, what's like 1 to 3 things you want people to take away?
I think the main thing that, and we're touching on it a little bit in our conversation that like I notice every day and I'm thinking about more and more is emotional avoidance. And
Mm,
the way that, as you express like that we're really not taught like how to navigate our emotions. It's like our whole lives are we're trained to kind of avoid them, ignore them, act like they don't exist. Um, so, I think, in the work that I do, like it's almost always everything comes back to what are you avoiding? What's the
mm,
feeling that you're avoiding, and being disconnected with, self. So, I think that's the biggest thing, for everybody to really kind of think about, keep in mind, like emotional avoidance is everywhere. So we're doing it constantly. It's like, and all this, going back to the topic of technology, that's what we use it for. That's why it's so useful. It's a great
interesting.
distraction from ourselves. So, yeah. And, as you said, nothing changes until it does, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, April. And hopefully we'll